all this stupidity comes with consequences. And we're seeing those consequences play out in the financial markets right now, ladies and gentlemen, as I look at the price of gold approaching $2,400 an ounce. This is incredible. I mean, look, you know I like gold. You know I'm partial to gold. You know I incorporate it as part of my portfolio. At 76research.com, we have an inflation-protected portfolio, and gold is part of that. You can read more at 76research.com. You can sign up and get all the stock picks and all the advice there at 76research.com so that you know how to invest for the future. Rob and I have spent a lot of time on this, a lot of time for you. But I've been talking about gold for a while, right? I've been saying, hey, you know, watch it. It's probably edging higher. I would not have predicted it would be this high. I would have said 2,200, and I think we got near there a while back, but like 2,200. It's at 2,367 right now, ladies and gentlemen. This is today. So this is a 5-year chart. Take a look. It's just been steadily climbing over the last 5 years. It's been steadily climbing, heck, since 2011. It hit a bit of a peak in 2011. And then it's been climbing back to that, and it's now surpassed the peak. You know what's happened since 2011? Inflation. Massive amounts of inflation to the tune of some 35% of an increase in CPI. That's the Consumer Price Index. 18% of an increase since Joe Biden became president. So you get stupid people doing stupid things, increasing the M2 money supply in historic ways that we've never seen before. And you don't think it's going to have an effect on prices? Really? I mean, I have to sit there and listen to Janet Yellen over in China tell us that, no, you know, things are okay. She's now talking to a CNBC reporter and saying, oh, you know, everything's great. You know, American households, they're doing great. No, they're not, Janet. They're not doing great. And the reason they're not doing great is because of your inflation. You people thought that you could print and print and print and print. Joe Biden thought he could hand out a third stimulus check. Chuck Schumer thought he could just print trillions more and give all that away to his cronies. Well, it comes back to bite you in a pretty significant way, and it's being reflected in gold prices. I'll tell you, somebody who I think is just a really terrific guy. I know some of you got, you know, you don't like the big banks and this, that, and the other. Well, this big banker is a really stand-up banker and is pretty forthcoming and is pretty straightforward. And I'm talking about Jamie Dimon, who runs our nation's largest bank, JP Morgan Chase. He was over in Davos earlier this year, like defending conservatives, saying, what's going on? Like, you can't just keep profiling people and writing off half the country. Enough is enough, right? Well, he's out with a new letter. He comes out with like an annual letter. It's a long one. It's a doozy. I've read it all. And he's making some interesting predictions. Before I get to those, I just want you to hear his frame of mind. This was at a conference that he was at. I want to say this was towards the end of the year. So a few months back, he hasn't really changed his tune. He's got a lot of concerns about the future ahead. Listen to Jamie Dimon.
When you look at the geopolitical situation, as complex as we've seen, I don't know if it's 1948 or 1938. Obviously, we all hope it goes away. I think it's a little bit of wishful thinking. It's going to take real leadership on the part of many people out there. And then I look at the financial situation, the fiscal spending, which is more than it's ever. I'm talking about the United States, but it's almost true around the world. It's more than it's ever been in peacetime by a long shot, with the highest debt levels we ever had by government. And there's this kind of omnipotent feeling that central banks and governments can manage through all this stuff. I'm cautious. I don't think it makes a piece of difference whether rates go up 25 basis points or more. Like zero, none, nada. I think whether the whole curve goes up 100 basis points, you know, I urge people, be prepared for it. I don't know if it's going to happen. But I look at what we're seeing today more like the 70s. A lot of spending, a lot of it's going to be wasted. I'm in favor of this whole ESG effort. On the other hand, if you look at the way we're going about it, it's almost like governments want to whack them all and force it, but no carbon taxes, no rational way to go about it that would be more important. In the United States, for example, you know, you can't build pipelines to reduce coal emissions. You can't get the permits to build solar and wind and things like that. So we better get our act together. I'm hopeful when I listen to all the R&D, see it around the world, we will make the breakthroughs we need to beat climate. but it's going to be a day later and longer than it should be because of our own basic incompetence. I also want to add one last thing. I'm taking it from Bob Gates. To fix this, it's going to take real leadership from the Western world, in particular America, but leadership which is not just military, diplomatic, development finance. And this development finance, I don't know if Ajay's still here, what we need in development finance dwarfs what governments can do. So it can't be done without private capital, and private capital isn't going to come in if you build something that gets taken from a government or something like that. So we have a lot of work to do. It's one of the reasons I think these events are positive, but I would be quite concerned. And the other thing about when you look at economics, I think people prepare for possibilities and probabilities, not calling one course of action, since I've never seen anyone call it. I want to point out that central banks 18 months ago were 100% dead wrong. Okay, so maybe there should be humility about financial forecasting. I would be quite cautious about what might happen next year.
Yeah, he's spot on. They were absolutely dead wrong. I said it at the time. I was pounding the table here telling you, beware of inflation, beware of inflation. We're going all the way back to August of 2020 when I started this podcast. I know a lot of people didn't want to hear it back then, but I was telling you, there's no way that this is actually going to end well. There's no possible way. So Jamie Dimon is making the point in his letter. That was from a few months ago, guys. But he's making the point in his letter that the mini banking crisis of 2023 is over, right? The SVB thing, that was a disaster. But beware of higher rates and recession, not just for banks, but for the entire economy. And then when he talks about those higher rates, he said, look, they could go to 8%. So if you get rates at 8%, what does that do? That dampens everything for the economy. He's evoking the World War III stuff too. I mean, JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon, here you go. This headline brought to you. It's caught up with the mainstream media, CBS News, sounds alarm about possible worse risks to U.S. since World War II. And why is this? Well, one, the money printing. Okay, it's insane how much money they printed, and that's why gold keeps going up in value, because you're an emerging market country. How are you feeling about things right about now? You're saying, hey, is the U.S. going to be there for me? Does the dollar even matter anymore? And so you start to question all this stuff, and what do? You go and buy gold because you're like, okay, well, I got a sure thing here. Let me make sure I have a sure thing. Nothing's a sure thing. All right. Nothing's a sure thing. But people are feeling a lot of trepidation about the U.S. dollar and about interest rates and how much the U.S. can afford and the political dynamic of all of this. Because we're so broken politically. I mean, when you've got, for the first time in U.S. history, the president of the United States, former president, who's about to begin a trial on April 15th, and they're selecting the jury as we speak. And you have all these rabidly political people surrounding this entire ordeal. You know what? That's a reason to be frightened. Political people, stupid people. And they are stupid. So look out for yourself. Look out for yourself. It's a big part of what Rob and I talk about. He's going to come on the show later this week, and we can talk about it together here with you. So save up your questions. But this is why we created these model portfolios. So there's model portfolios. You can actually pick one that's inflation protected. You can have an income builder, because the whole idea is, wait a second, as you get older, you want a little income coming in. You don't want to take on a ton of risk, but you need that income to keep up with inflation, because inflation, thanks to these morons, is so off the charts. And if they get their way on the student loan thing, it's going to be even worse. So there's a constant theme here, and this is why I urge you to look out for yourself, to prepare yourself. And part of that preparation is getting the right research from people who don't have anything other than your best interest at heart, which would be me and my colleague and my co-founder at 76research.com.